Sanchakshano dahan iva abhiplutya svagadaya hatosityahanad dharim. Please chant.
Hare Krishna. Karaladramshachakshurubhayam sankashno shanodhanan iva abhiplutaya sagadaya ato asti ahanad dharim. Hare Krishna.
Karaladamshachakshubhyam sanchakshanodhanaiva abhiplutya swagadaya hatostya hatosyanadarim.
Hare Krishna. Karalidam chakshurpayam sankshanodaham iva abhiplutya swagadaya ato hasitya ahanadharim. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Karal dakshaksha shubhaya sanchakshano dahiniva abhiluktaya swagadaya ato sitya handarim.
Anyone else? Okay. Karala, fearful. Dangshtraha, having tusks. Chakshurabhyam, with both eyes. Sanchakshanaha, staring. Dahan, burning. Iva, as if. Abhiplutya, attacking. Svagadaya, with his own club. Hataha, slain. Asi, you are. Iti, thus. Ahanat, struck. Harim, at. Hari. Translation by Abhay Charan Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The demon, who had fearful tusks, stared at the personality of Godhead as though to burn him. Springing into the air, he aimed his mace at the Lord, exclaiming at the same time, "You are slain!" So this, of course, is our continuation of the fierce battle between Hiranyaksha and Lord Varahadev. As Acharya Prabhu pointed out a few days back, Varahadev sort of played with Hiranyaksha for a while, like a brilliant dance, just exchanging these powerful blows and with these various weapons, so showing this showing the prowess of this demon, who is actually a devotee, and Krishna's reciprocation with that. Right, so that was text 8. Then 9. O saintly Vidura, while his enemy looked on, the Lord, in his boar form, the enjoyer of all sacrificial offerings, playfully knocked down the mace with his left foot, even as it came upon him with the force of a tempest. Right? So here, after the Lord and his devotee, in the form of a demon, are exchanging powerful blows and disarming one another, and then allowing the other to again pick up weapons. Now, Lord Varahadev, this is a transition that we see in many of Krishna's fights, where at first he'll sort of play around and allow the aggressor to feel as if they are a worthy opponent. Of course, no one is a worthy opponent of the Supreme Lord, unless one has unconditional love for the Supreme Lord. Then the Supreme Lord is certainly conquered by that. But when we're talking a battle of strength, there is no actual worthy opponent of the Supreme Lord. But he likes to let people think that they're worthy opponents for some time, and then there's always a transition where then all of a sudden, for one reason or another, everything starts going a very different way. So we saw in the pastime of the Kaliya serpent. At first, Krishna was wrapped up in Kaliya's coils, and it looked as if there was no hope for Krishna to actually win that fight. And the residents of Vrindavan who were standing on the bank of the Yamuna and watching it happen, when they thought that Krishna was actually in mortal danger, as if the Supreme Lord could actually be in mortal danger, but since it appeared that way, they themselves felt that there was no reason left to live. So they were actually leaving their bodies on the bank of the Yamuna, because as far as their eyes were telling them, their life and soul, the treasure of Vraj, was in serious trouble, right? But then in that pastime, when Krishna saw that his devotees were becoming too much afflicted by seeing him in that state, then he started his dance, right? He started dancing on the heads of the Kaliya serpent and driving away all of the venomous ideas that Kaliya had as being independent from the Supreme Lord, right? Through that dance. So here we also see this transition where at first the Supreme Lord Varahadev and Hiranyaksha, at first they're exchanging blows, and it looks maybe as if it's an even fight, and sometimes it may even look like Hiranyaksha, of course depending on who's watching, it may seem that Hiranyaksha has the upper hand. He's able to disarm the Supreme Lord, right? Which is that's an impressive task when one is fighting with weapons and one is able to disarm your opponent. That's actually a sign of great skill and strength, right? So we go from that to the Supreme Lord just with his left foot, right? And he's a boar, right? So he's in the form of a boar, which is already bewildering. And Hiranyaksha, swinging his club with the force of a tempest, and Lord Varahadev in his form of a boar, just with his left foot, just very easily knocks it down. And it says playfully, so he playfully knocks it down, as if it were just nothing, right? Then text 10. The Lord then said, "Take up your weapon and try again, eager as you are to conquer me." Challenging in these words, the demon aimed his mace at the Lord and once more loudly roared. So here we see that before, when Hiranyaksha was able to disarm the Supreme Lord, he didn't go in to try to fight him, because he at least has, Hiranyaksha at least has this sense of proper fighting, right? If you have a weapon and your enemy does not, then it's not actually honorable to continue the fight until another weapon, or either the weapon is picked up or another weapon is taken up. Or you can also just put your weapon down and then continue the fight hand to hand like that, right? So he's following the rules of proper warfare. So here, Lord Varahadev, he's reciprocating with that. So he appreciated the fact that Hiranyaksha previously, was acting properly, was acting according to the codes of conduct of battle. So he's also doing that. But he's also doing it in such a way that is going to really just make this demon's blood boil, right? He's doing it in such a way because he's being playful about it. Whereas Hiranyaksha, he was very, very angry, and when he thought he had the upper hand, he's, with so much power and confidence, he's that was today's first verse. So much power and confidence, so he had these fearful tusks, and he's staring at him as if he's burning a hole through him. We've all had these types of arguments in the material world. Usually it's with someone we love, otherwise you don't have that much effect on the person, but somehow, whether it's a friend or a family member, somehow we've let them down or disappointed them, and they're staring at us with such fire, or sometimes we're the ones that are staring with such fire, right? So here, Hiranyaksha, he's proud of what he's done so far. He considers himself to be very powerful, and in a very serious way, he's exclaiming to the Lord, "You are slain," because he thinks he's about to just finish this fight, right? So he has this sense of confidence. He has power, but he has this sense of confidence, and we talked about this a few weeks ago when we were talking about the opulences. If one doesn't have renunciation, the other opulences aren't actually that attractive, right? They're still impressive, but without the sense of renunciation, they can just become annoying, right? They're useful. In other words, if you have strength, then you can use it, and even if you don't have renunciation, at least it's helpful for the situation. But if you don't have renunciation, it's actually quite annoying, because it's just it's just this sense of conceitedness and pride that is actually not very attractive, right? So here we see that Lord Varahadev, he's reciprocating with Hiranyaksha, but he's doing it in a playful mood. So he's doing it with detachment, with renunciation, and this, of course, is going to make Hiranyaksha so much more angry, right? Because he was showing his strength, and then he was showing his pride, and he thought he was about to defeat the Supreme Lord, and then the Supreme Lord very easily, with his left foot in the form of a boar, just knocks the club aside, which would normally destroy so many things, just very playfully, and then taunts him in a playful way. Take up your weapon again, eager as you are to conquer me, right? So being challenged in that way, Hiranyaksha, he gets very angry. He aims his mace again at the Lord, and once again loudly roared. Then, text 11, when the Lord saw the mace flying toward him, he stood firmly where he was and caught it with the same ease as Garuda, the king of birds, would seize a serpent. So again, very playful, right? He didn't try to dodge the club that was coming at him. He stood exactly where he was and just very easily took it from the great and powerful Hiranyaksha, just as easily as Garuda would pick up a serpent. And we know that Garuda, very powerful, with great ease, he's just able to pick up these serpents. One day, here in Kentucky, where I am, I was looking, this was a long time ago, I was looking at various properties. I wanted to get a property here. And so I'm driving down the road, and I see this bird very large bird just swooped down out of the sky into a cow pasture, and just in one motion, it went down. It swooped. It barely brushed the grass, and then it started flying back up in the air. But as it was flying up in the air, I saw that it had a snake in its talons, right? So even in just the material world, even an ordinary bird can very easily just catch a snake. They see them from a far distance. Uh, the serpents are very helpless. They don't know that the danger is there until it's too late, and they're not quick enough to get away from them. And so this bird was just very easily flying away with the snake. So what to speak of an ordinary bird and doing that, and with what ease it has. The Lord was able to grab Hiranyaksha's club with the ease that Garuda, the king of the birds, is able to just snatch up a serpent. Then, verse 12, his valor thus frustrated, the great demon felt humiliated and was put out of countenance. He was reluctant to take back the mace when it was offered by the personality of Godhead. So again, the Supreme Lord, following the codes of conduct as a reciprocation for Hiranyaksha following the codes of conduct of battle, said, okay, here, you want this back? After he just very easily took it from him, he said, oh, you want this back? You want to try that again? Right? So now Hiranyaksha, he's not, his pride is starting to become shattered. And he's thinking, if he takes that weapon back now, after that display, it would just humiliate him more and more. So then text 13. He now took a trident, which was as rapacious as a flaming fire, and hurled it against the Lord, the enjoyer of all sacrifices, even as one would use penance for a malevolent purpose against a holy Brahmana. Right, so to show how futile and counterproductive this is, this comparison is made. And then text 14. This is the last one for today. Hurled by the mighty demon with all his strength, the flying trident shone brilliantly in the sky. The personality of Godhead, however, tore it to pieces with his discus Sudarshana, which had a sharp-edged rim, even as Indra cut off a wing of Garuda. Purport. The context of the reference given here regarding Garuda and Indra is this. Once upon a time, Garuda, the carrier of the Lord, snatched away a nectar pot from the hands of the demigods in heaven in order to liberate his mother, Vinata, from the clutches of his stepmother, Kadru, the mother of the serpents. On learning of this, Indra, the king of heaven, hurled his thunderbolt against Garuda. With a view to respect the infallibility of Indra's weapon, Garuda, though otherwise invincible, being the Lord's own mount, dropped one of his wings, which was shattered to pieces by the thunderbolt. The inhabitants of higher planets are so sensible that even in the process of fighting, they observe the preliminary rules and regulations of gentleness. In this case, Garuda wanted to show respect for Indra. Since he knew that Indra's weapon must destroy something, he offered his wing. Translation again. Hurled by the mighty demon with all his strength, the flying trident shone brilliantly in the sky. The personality of Godhead, however, tore it to pieces with his discus Sudarshana, which had a sharp-edged rim, even as Indra cut off a wing of Garuda. So with that ease. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminita Namane Namaste Sarasvate Devi Gauravani Pacharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashati Deshatarne Om Agnana Timirandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Panchakalpatrubhyas Chakrapa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Paditaram Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So it just so happens that very recently I was reading through Brihad Bhagavatamrita, and this incident is also referenced there in Brihad Bhagavatamrita of the interaction between Indra and Garuda. And so I want to read that because it gives a little bit more perspective of what happened there. And we'll talk about a few things about how devotees, how servants of the Lord, always respect other devotees, even when they are not behaving in an ideal way, and so on. So anyway, first we'll read this. This is from Mahabharata, Astika Parva 33, Adi Parva. Forgive the translation; it sounds a little biblical, but you'll get the gist of what's being said. So here it is. And while that foremost of all rangers of the skies, that first of winged creatures, Garuda, was coursing through the air after wresting the Amrita, Indra hurled at him his thunderbolt. Then Garuda, the lord of birds, struck with thunderbolt, spake laughingly unto Indra, engaged in the encounter in sweet words, saying, I shall respect the Rishi, meaning Dadichi, of whose bone the Vajra hath been made. I shall also respect the Vajra, and thee also of 1,000 sacrifices. I cast this feather of mine, whose end thou shalt not attain. Struck with thy thunder, I have not felt the slightest pain. And having said this, the king of birds cast a feather of his, and all creatures became exceedingly glad, beholding that excellent feather of Garuda so cast off. And seeing that the feather was very beautiful, they said, let this bird be called Suparna, having fair feathers.
Mhm.
And Purandara, of 1,000 eyes, witnessing this wonderful incident, thought that bird to be some great being and addressed him thus. And Indra said, O best of birds, I desire to know the limits of thy strength. I also desire eternal friendship with thee. Right, so here we have,
Beautiful.
right? So here we have a little bit more context of what happened there. Garuda, in order to save his mother, as we learned from today's purport, took this pot of nectar from Indra. Indra just sees someone trying to steal something that's his, right? So he throws his thunderbolt weapon. This thunderbolt weapon, of course, was made from the bones of Dadichi, a respected Brahmana. It was made for the purpose of dispatching Vritrasur, right? There was no other way that he could be defeated. And Garuda, knowing this and being a dear devotee of the Supreme Lord, the Lord's carrier, out of respect for both the Brahmana, and the weapon that was made out of his bones, the sacrifice of the Brahmana, and out of respect for even Indra, for having a post that was given indirectly. I mean, the post is given by the Supreme Lord, or Lord Brahma actually directly would have put him there, but of course that's all coming through the authority of Lord Vishnu. So respecting all of these things, the divinity of the weapon, the situation with which it was created, all of that, Garuda, even though he has a completely spiritual body, unlike Indra, um, he thought, well, this divine weapon has come in contact with me. I can't just allow nothing to happen because then people will lose faith in such things. So out of respect, he cast off a feather, right? So in today's verse and purport, we're talking about a wing. Here we're talking about a feather, whichever way. Either way, Garuda was not fazed by this at all. He was just out of respect, reciprocating with the divine weapon that was empowered by the Tejas of the Brahmana, uh, and giving that respect. And as a result of that, Indra, he didn't become more upset, right? When that happened, he actually understood, oh, this is a divine creature, and this is someone who I should actually become friends with, right? So he understood. So this is how, when two devotees, maybe not understanding that each is a devotee at the time, when there's some quarrel, when they come to understand each other's connection with the Supreme Lord, then all of that negativity should go away, actually, and one should appreciate the common connections that we have together. Let's see. Then I also wanted to read, there's a verse in a purport that, I mean, fairly recently we went over. This is also in the third canto, but it was the first chapter, so a little while ago. Um, Verse 39, and it says, "Are the twin brothers who are protected by their brothers doing well?" Meaning Nakul and Sahadev, who are protected by Arjuna and Bhima and Yudhishthira. Just as the eye is always protected by the eyelid, the twins are protected by the sons of Pritha, who snatched back their rightful kingdom from the hands of their enemy Duryodhana, just as Garuda snatched nectar from the mouth of Indra, the thunderbolt carrier. Right. So this verse is also referring to the past time where Garuda took this pot and with great ease, and in the same way the Pandavas with great ease were able to snatch back their rightful kingdom. And in the purport, that gives us a little bit more information. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, "Indra, the king of heaven, carries a thunderbolt in his hands and is very strong. Yet Garuda, the carrier of Lord Vishnu, was able to snatch nectar from his mouth. Similarly, Duryodhana was as strong as the king of heaven, and still the sons of Pritha, the Pandavas, were able to snatch away their kingdom from Duryodhana. Both Garuda and the Parthas are pet devotees of the Lord, and thus it was possible for them to face such strong enemies." Right? So anything that we perceive in the material world to be of value, whether it's strength or wealth or fame or knowledge, wisdom, if we do not see it, those things, those attractive things, in connection with Krishna, then we are dealing not with reality, but with illusion, right? We know this from the Srimad Bhagavatam Chatur Shloki, second verse. Well, the first verse, we understand that everything is actually coming from Krishna, right? And in the second verse, we are taught that if we consider that something has value, but we do not understand its connection to Krishna, then actually we're dealing with illusion. We're not dealing with reality, because there's no such thing as anything that is separate from Krishna, right? So if we're assigning value to something without any connection to Krishna, then this means that we're dealing with illusion, right? So even though there can be some power, there can, strength, knowledge, wealth, beauty, if we're not seeing it in connection to Krishna, it's actually temporary, right? It's illusory, right? So the Pandavas, they're strong, but the Kurus were also strong, right? But the difference was that the Pandavas, they are, as this purport said, the pet devotees of the Lord. And so therefore, That's why it's possible. It's not because of their power independent from the Supreme Lord. It's because their power in connection to the Supreme Lord. So whatever qualities we have or whatever qualities we observe in the world, uh, if we're understanding them properly in connection with the Supreme Lord, then we're actually connected to them and we can accomplish anything. But if we consider these things uh, independently or not connected to the Supreme Lord, if I think that I have power on my own or intelligence or beauty or fame or even renunciation, just based on my own capacity, right? If I think that I attained those things by something that I've done, then I'm dealing with illusion. So, meaning I'll only temporarily have access to such uh, opulences, and not using them properly, I won't actually be able to accomplish very much, right? Because whatever is accomplished, it's within an illusion. It's not within reality. Therefore, ultimately, nothing's actually being accomplished. So, since Garuda and the Pandus, Parthas, are pet devotees of the Lord, then it's possible for them to very easily face these strong enemies, right? Garuda didn't have a problem when he grabbed that nectar from Indra. It was the easiest thing for him, and he only lost that feather or wing or part of the wing as a respect for his master, Lord Vishnu. So in other words, he's always seeing everything in connection to Krishna. He didn't have pride, right? When Indra, who's a jiva in the material world, attacked Garuda, spiritual body, who's the carrier of Vishnu, that can be considered to be insulting, actually. But he didn't become proud. He said, okay, well, this is a divine weapon. You're also trying to do your service to the Supreme Lord, so therefore, here you go. Here's a feather. Congratulations. You have, I mean, not defeated him, obviously, but in a sense, there was a little bit of defeat there because he saw that the Supreme Lord showed favor to him, and in that way he was defeated, right? But since he's undefeatable, then all he gets is that little feather. And of course, then Indra understood that Garuda's connection also to Krishna, and then they were able to appreciate each other's association. So then, continuing, speaking on this topic, the 10th canto, 59th chapter. So the whole chapter, or much of the chapter, talks about this pastime. We're going to read verse 20, and then I'll read some of the introduction to that chapter, just to give a little bit more reference, and then we'll tie it back to what we're talking about today. So 10:59:20, seeing his army driven back and tormented by Garuda, Bauma, which is Narakasur, attacked him with his spear, which had once defeated Lord Indra's thunderbolt. But though struck by that mighty weapon, Garuda was not shaken. Indeed, he was like an elephant hit with a flower garland. Now, one might say here, right, because it's pointed out specifically that Balmasur, or Narakasur, whichever one you want to call him, his weapon actually defeated Lord Indra's thunderbolt, right? He was able to steal Balmasur, if those of you who do not remember, he was a kleptomaniac. He was able to steal a lot of things and people, right? He kidnapped a whole lot of princesses. He stole Lord Varuna's umbrella. He stole Mother Aditi's earrings. He stole the pleasure grounds of the Devatas, Mani Parvata. And Indra couldn't stop him, right? So Balmasur's spear was able to defeat Indra's thunderbolt. So one might think that since Garuda uh, was defeated by Indra's thunderbolt, and Indra's thunderbolt was defeated by Balmasur's spear, then Balmasur's spear should easily defeat Garuda, right? It stands to reason, one might think. But it's not as if, so in the material world we have things that are powerful. In the material world, that's how it would work, right? If I'm I'm trying to look for something that I can give an example with. Okay, we'll just talk about numbers here. All right, so you have the number 9, right? But then you have the number 11, which is greater than 9, right? So 11 wins. But then you have the number 13, which is greater than 11. So 13 being greater than 11, 11 being greater than 9, 13 clearly is going to be greater than 9. That's how things work here. But since we know the context of what happened in that battle between Garuda and Indra, it wasn't about the external thing, right? It wasn't about what's more powerful than what. As far as things go, the concept of love of God, or one's connection to the Supreme Lord, that is more powerful, which is why, from Garuda's point of view, he was able to cast one of his feathers to respect that Vajra. When Narakasur stole these things from Indra and Indra tried to stop him, Narakasur, who's actually, since we know his name is also Balmasur, he's the son of Bhumi and Vrahadev, actually. He's their son. So he was able to steal, but through bad association, he became a demon. He was able to steal these things from Indra and defeat Indra, even though Indra's using this thunderbolt, because he doesn't care about that connection, right? Through bad association, he became a demon. So he's not appreciating the fact that that weapon came from Dadichi's bones. He's not respecting any of that. He just wants to steal these things that he thinks have value. So he does, right? So one might think that since Balmasur's spear had defeated Lord Indra's thunderbolt, and Lord Indra's thunderbolt defeated Garuda, then sure, the spear would very easily defeat Garuda. But as it says here in 10:59:20, those struck by that mighty weapon, which is even mightier, as proven, than Indra's thunderbolt, Garuda was not shaken. It was like hitting an elephant with a flower garland, right? Elephants are very big, powerful, strong. You throw a flower garland at them, even if you throw it at full force, it's barely going to feel that anything happened. They have very thick skin. They're able to pull trees, full-size trees, out of the ground with their trunks, right? Or just as they walk through the woods, they're just knocking stuff over that normally, are considered to be immovable, right? So, because Balmasur, even though he does have a connection to the Supreme Lord, since he's turned his back on that connection through association with demonic elements, there's no longer a need for Garuda to respect him in that way, right? So therefore, even though that mighty weapon was thrown at Garuda, he's not shaken at all. He did not drop any feathers, no wings, nothing. Right. And we see that even Krishna, Lord Krishna himself, when he's driving Arjuna's chariot, and there are arrows flying hither and thither, and from Krishna's point of view, as a chariot driver, he's driving the chariot in such a way that none of those arrows will hit Arjuna, right? He's giving proper protection to Arjuna, so he can just, shoot off his own arrows. And although Krishna is so expert that he could drive the chariot in such a way that no one gets hit by arrows, as a show of how much he loves his devotees, he was driving it in such a way that he himself, Krishna, was getting struck by arrows. And although Krishna has a spiritual body, he's showing, there's blood coming from his body, what appears to be blood, when Bhishma Dev is shooting these arrows, because he's reciprocating with Bhishma Dev, who's also a devotee, right? And in the rasa that they the relationship that they enjoy. Um, it's said that when those arrows were hitting Krishna, he was accepting those just as if someone were offering flower petals to his feet. It's just an offering of love that he's reciprocating with, giving a response to. So he's allowing, these drops of blood to come off of his body, um, just to reciprocate with that relationship, right? So we see that when we get down to the matter of reality, of spiritual relationships, spiritual interactions, the rules that we think are rules that are established in the material world actually don't mean anything. They don't mean a thing, right? When we're speaking of transcendence, when we're understanding how everything is connected to Krishna, the rules of material nature no longer apply, right? But that's only when we become free from the modes of material nature, when we're actually fixated exclusively on the service of the Supreme Lord. So we can see that. Now I'm going to read just a little bit of the summary of that chapter, 10th Canto 59, just to show a little bit more context of what was going on between the fight between Narakasur and Garuda. Oh, and this is to say, so this just is going back, and it's all connected because Narakasur is related to Varahadev. But in today's verse, we were learning about how Lord Varaha was able to cut to pieces very easily the weapon of Hiranyaksha, just as Indra was easily able to cut off the wing of Garuda. So here's part of the chapter summary of 59th chapter of 10th canto. After Narakasur, or Balmasur, whichever you want to call him, stole Lord Varuna's umbrella, Mother Aditi's earrings, and the playground of the demigods known as Mani Parvata, Indra went to Dvarka and described the demon's transgressions to Lord Krishna, right? So Indra, having gotten all these things stolen from him, approached Krishna. And this is what any devotee does when they're in distress. They approach Krishna. They don't try any other ways. So he described all of these things that Narakasur did. Then, together with Queen Satyabhama, the Lord mounted his carrier Garuda and traveled to the capital of Narakasur's kingdom. On a field outside the city, he decapitated the demon Mura with his disc. Then he fought Mura's 7 sons and sent them all to the abode of death, after which Narakasur himself entered the battlefield on the back of an elephant. Naraka threw his Shakti lance at Sri Krishna, but the weapon proved ineffective, and the Lord cut the demon's entire army to pieces. Finally, with his sharp-edged disc, Krishna cut off Narakasur's head. The earth goddess, Prithvi, then approached Lord Krishna and gave him the various items Narakasura had stolen. She offered prayers to the Lord and presented Naraka's frightened son at Lord Krishna's lotus feet. It's actually his grandson. In the form of Varahadev, Narakasur or Balmasur is his son, so Naraka's frightened son would be Varaha and Bhumi's grandson. Let's see. And after pacifying the demon's son, Krishna entered Narakasur's palace, where he found 16,100 young women. As soon as they caught sight of the Lord, they all decided to accept him as their husband. The Lord sent them to Dvarka along with a great quantity of treasure, and then went with Queen Satyabhama to the abode of Indra. Right. Because since Indra asked Krishna to go and return these things, so he after getting all these things back from Naraka, then he went to take them back. Continuing, There he returned Aditi's earrings, and Indra and his wife Sachi Devi worshipped him. This is where it gets a little tricky. On Satyabhama's request, Lord Krishna uprooted the heavenly Parijata tree and put it on the back of Garuda, right? So Krishna, he did what Indra wanted him to do, right? Indra approached him and said, hey, this demon has stolen all of these, valuable things from us. Can you please get them back? So he did. He went, he killed Narakasur. He brought these things back, but he had Satyabhama with him, and Satyabhama saw this beautiful tree. And she said, hey, can we have this? And you can't say no to your wife, right? So Krishna pulled that tree out, put it on the back of Garuda, loaded it up and said, okay, let's go. Indra, on the other hand, did not appreciate this, even though Krishna just completely saved him from all the things. Indra's, out of pride, is saying, you cannot take that tree, which is a heavenly tree, down to the earthly realm. Not considering that that's no longer the earthly realm, because anywhere Krishna is the spiritual realm, which is higher than the celestial realm. So, since Indra didn't quite understand what was going on, a battle took place. So continuing this summary, after defeating Indra and the other demigods who opposed his taking of the tree, Krishna returned with Queen Satyabhama to Dwarka, where he planted it in a garden adjacent to Satyabhama's palace. Indra had originally come to Lord Krishna, offering obeisances, and begged him to kill Narakasur. But afterwards, when his business had been accomplished, he quarreled with the Lord. The demigods are prone to anger because they become intoxicated with pride in their opulences, right? So even though Indra did the right thing by approaching Krishna when he was in distress, he still had this sense of proprietorship over these heavenly riches. And so when Krishna himself tried to take some away, he sort of lost his mind a little bit for a moment. And then finishing this summary, the infallible Supreme Lord manifested himself in 16,100 separate forms and married each of the 16,100 brides in a different temple. He took up the required activities of household life just like an ordinary person, accepting various kinds of service from each of his many wives. Right? So this also shows, not only is it showing all of these stories are connected, but the common element here is how Krishna is always reciprocating with everyone according to whatever they're doing, right? So he's helping out Lord Indra when Indra asks for his help, but then when Indra sort of, misunderstands the actual situation, then he'll actually fight with him and defeat him. And when 16,100 beautiful young princesses desired to have him as a husband, he expanded himself in that number of forms, because each of these ladies deserved to have Krishna for themselves, right? So Krishna expanded himself in all of those in all of those forms and married them all the same day, but in different temples, right? Simultaneously, lives with each of them in their specific palaces and interacts with them on a very individual basis specific to the reciprocation of each of these princesses, right? So we have this understanding then that Krishna will always reciprocate with everyone, devotee or non-devotee. That reciprocation is always beautiful, poetic, and if we, as aspiring devotees, want to really relish the sweetness of that reciprocation, then we ourselves have to become pure devotees. We have to consider that everything of value is actually, the only reason anything has value is because of its connection to Krishna. So therefore, if we utilize everything that we come in contact with properly in Krishna's service instead of improperly for our own service, how it's how these things benefit us, we use them for the way that they benefit the Supreme Lord. Then and only then, when we actually understand how everything is connected to Krishna and how all of these things are to be used favorably in his service, then we will be able to experience these more personal, sweet exchanges of love that we see that the pure devotees of the Lord are able to share with Krishna and also with the other devotees, right? And this always comes when we understand everything's connection to Krishna. So even though sometimes among devotees there will be some disagreements or misunderstandings, ultimately, if these aspiring devotees who are quarreling with one another, ultimately, if they are understanding each other's relationship with Krishna, then the quarrel won't last long, and they will be able to cooperate properly in Krishna's service. And so that's what we can learn from today's block of verses. We saw that the Lord, he's reciprocating with this devotee who is in the form of a demon because of the curse of the Kumaras. And he's, since the demon is fighting with honor, the Supreme Lord is again fighting with this same honor, but without pride, right? To show that true power without or power without renunciation isn't actually true power, right? It's just a temporary manifestation of a reflection of power. But when one stops dealing with the reflection, meaning one is dealing with the actual reality, seeing it as part of Krishna and using it in that way, then we actually have access to the reality, right? Then it's not a temporary thing. It's not going to take us further from Krishna. It's actually going to bring us closer. So that's always the key, is being able to see everything in relation to Krishna, right? And so for us, aspiring Vaishnavas, descriptions of the universal form, opulences of the absolute, etc., help us to understand how Krishna is present in all of these things that we're surrounded by, so that we have an opportunity to use those things appropriately and favorably in Krishna's service. And eventually, when we're able to do that, we'll be able to experience these sweet, reciprocal, loving exchanges with the Supreme Lord that are just based on relationship. Okay, we will stop here. See if there are any questions, comments, or discussions. Wow, we went longer than I thought. I didn't really have much, but somehow the time has gone. Any questions, comments, or discussions for today?
Krishna, I like the point that you said that, sometimes we have disagreement with other devotees, but knowing them that they are devotees of Krishna, we treat them nicely even. So that's a very good point. If you can practice that, that's very important. See Krishna. Everyone, especially devotees who are practicing Krishna consciousness, and respects them and serves them even we have disagreement.
Yes. It can be difficult because our material conditioning is very strong. So we actually sometimes feel justified in arguing with another aspiring devotee because we consider that our understanding of a certain situation is superior to their understanding of the situation. And therefore, it's conditionally natural for us to argue. But constitutionally, if we understand our position, our points of view, and how each person is doing what they're doing in hopes of serving Krishna better, If we can understand and appreciate that, then we can actually get to the heart of what we're quarreling about, and understand how, both sides actually have valid points, but we have to be able to determine how, when, why, where, etc., to apply those things where they will be favorable to Krishna service at the time, place, and circumstance, right? So, example I generally give is Ashvatthama. He committed so many horrendous activity. He killed the 5 sleeping sons of the Pandavas. Then he shot a Brahmastra at the remaining Pandavas, and after that was counteracted by Arjuna, then he shot another Brahmastra uh, uh, to the womb of Uttara, Maharaj Parikshit in the womb, to destroy the last of the dynasty. And even after all of that, and everyone at that point agreed that he's an aggressor, he has to be killed. But once he was in custody, then there was a split decision, right? Bhima, he still thought, yes, this is an aggressor, he needs to be killed. Krishna agreed with him. Draupadi understood the compassion. With her compassion, she understood, well, he is the son of a Brahmana, and generally he actually has these qualities, right? But he is an aggressor, right? So then Krishna had to instruct Arjuna that you have to satisfy everyone. So he is a Brahmana, so he can't be killed, but he's an aggressor, so he has to be killed, right? And normally you can't do both, right? It's either one or the other. Are we killing him or not, right? But Arjuna, using his intelligence, was able to determine with the time, place, and circumstance how he could simultaneously kill him and not kill him, right? So he removed the symbols of his prestige and respect, his top knot and the jewel that held it in place. So now no longer are people going to be treating him as a Brahmana. So in that sense, his reputation was killed. He was destroyed. No longer had influence over others. But his life was spared. So he's not killed and killed at the same time. And those of us who know the rest of this story, Ashvatthama, after severe penance and austerities and good association, in his next life, he's going to be one of the 7 rishis that oversee the piety of the world, who guide others in piety, right? So oftentimes our idea of a resolution of the situation, although it's established in some reality, there's some truth to our reasons for wanting to rectify a situation in a certain way. Although there's some substance there, it's not the whole picture, right? Because there's also some substance in what everyone else is saying. And so as long as we focus on how these things are connected to Krishna and how to properly engage them in an appropriate way according to the time, place, and circumstance where it's going to be favorable, then we all can actually stop quarreling. But as long as we're attached to our conditioning, it becomes more and more difficult to do that, right? But it's possible. And if we get down to the heart of the matter, and we can appreciate each of these different devotees' connection to Krishna, because Krishna appreciates any connection to him, right? And he encourages that, even if we have just the smallest spark of attachment for Krishna and the rest of our life is a mess, he appreciates that. And if someone doesn't appreciate that, then Krishna doesn't take so kindly to that person who's not appreciating that, because it is the only thing of value, a connection to Krishna. Everything else is illusion. So if we can focus on that, our connection to Krishna, and we can figure out a way to move forward in a Krishna conscious way, guided by Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, then there's hope. But as long as we're not actually being guided by Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, as long as whatever percentage of our motivation is materially motivated, then we'll remain here quarreling with one another and keeping ourselves from actually understanding fully the Supreme Lord. Anything else? Thank you for that, Golokananda Priya. Anything else?
Thank you, Chandra Prabhu. I really appreciated the class today. Sometimes it seems in life that maybe God or the mission of God is not winning. In the same way, it looked like, Hiranyaksha was becoming victorious. Varahadev was stumbling or took a blow. And when we look at the evil in the world, the manipulation, and just the lower natures just kind of prevailing, and we may think like, is there really any hope here? How can evil overcome good? And that's one of the doubts that sometimes comes about. Is it possible for God to prevail in such a corrupt world? This is a good example of, you kind of have to let things play out. And as you were talking, I kind of saw the parallel, like, to that. Like, we don't actually see directly, this Leela taking place in the world today, but we do see, there is a fight, between the divine and the demoniac. And sometimes it seems as if the demoniac is going to prevail.
Yeah. In the material world, often it seems that the demonic is going to prevail because we're looking for love in all the wrong places. We're not understanding what's reality. We're firmly situated in illusion. And because of that, evil does prevail. As long as we're situated in an illusion, then that actually means evil is prevailing, because we're not seeing things clearly. We're not seeing them in reality. We are seeing a very distorted version of our idea of reality based on the fact that we think that we're independent from the Supreme Lord. Right. And so, yes, sometimes it seems as it's hopeless, but there always is hope. But there's only one hope, and that hope is that we actually start seeing things the way they are. Right. We may try to become more materially powerful than our enemy, and if we're pious enough, we can actually become more powerful than our enemy, but only for a short amount of time, and it doesn't solve the problem. Right. The true enemy and the only enemy that we have is our desire to be separate from the Supreme Lord, right? The misuse of our free will, the identification with the false ego instead of the real ego. And if that enemy is defeated, then there are no other enemies. It is the only enemy, right? The others are like symptoms to a disease, right? If we try to just deal with these symptomatic problems without addressing the cause of those symptomatic problems, we're not actually fixing anything. We may get some temporary relief. We may get a sense of victory from time to time, or accomplishment, or pride, but it's not truly a win, right? We consider it a win, but we don't even understand what's real, right? So the only way to solve all of the world's problems is to see the world how it truly is, because this material world is an illusion. We feel as if it's very real, right? Because we're experiencing things, and you can't deny that. Um, but the soul is never in any danger, right? All of the pain that we're experiencing, it's actually temporary and inconsequential in the long run. And it's only a result of us not seeing things the way they truly are, right? Therefore it's an illusion, right? It's real in the sense that it's here and we experience it, but it's illusion in the sense that we're not seeing it properly in connection with Krishna, and therefore all of these different problems are going to come up, right? Because my idea of how the world is and your idea of how the world is, in other words, my illusion and your illusion, are different, so they're not compatible. Because in my version of illusion, I am the proprietor of this, but in your version of your illusion, you are the proprietor of this. So therefore, we're going to fight over it, right? And I'm going to give my various reasons why I am the, proprietor of that, and you're going to give your reasons. So that's where the quarrel ends. So that's all evil. All evil is just us thinking that we're independent from the Supreme Lord, separate from Him, not seeing everything's connection with the Lord. So the solution is that wherever we do see the connection, even if it's just in one very small aspect of our life, we have to cultivate that and make it from a very small aspect of our life to a slightly bigger aspect of our life. So that's actually what we know as bhajana kriya, right? Cultivating those positive engagements that we know are situated in reality, right? And after we do that for some time, after we really cultivate those areas that we have this connection to Krishna consciousness, to our Sanatana Dharma, our eternal nature, then we start seeing that, okay, now I'm taking advantage of this driving force that's moving me forward in spirituality, but I'm also noticing that there are certain things that are holding me back, right? Anchors that are down. And so then, still being guided by the scriptures, we learn how to turn those anchors, the things that are holding us back, into things that are going to pull us forward, right? By learning how to engage them properly in Krishna service, seeing the things as they are, not how they serve me, but how they are to be used in Krishna service, right? So the very things that are holding us back then become things that drive us forward. That's called anartha nivritti, right? And so we have to do these things in order to advance in our understanding, right? Because otherwise our understanding is very much situated in illusion. Therefore, goodness cannot win in that situation. I mean, God can always win, and He's always winning. But when we're situated in the illusion, we're going to be convinced that He's not winning because we're situated in illusion. If that makes any sense. This is one of those discussions we can have for months, and we should actually to get a better understanding of it. Is there anything that I missed that I should speak more about, Dronacharya Prabhu?
I really appreciated you elaborating on that point. Thank you. One thing that comes to mind real quick is that, one way we see that God is winning is that ultimately our material bodies, however great they are, they die. And, I was thinking in the 11th chapter where Arjuna asks, I want to know what your plan is. What is your plan? And his response was, time I am the destroyer of the worlds. Like that's in one sense Krishna's victory over our illusory condition. No matter how bad or demoniac things may be, they're it's temporary and will come to an end.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it, Prabhu. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anything else?
Thank you very much, Prabhu. Lots of points you said. And it's a very, very valuable class. Thank you very much for all that.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Okay. So I think then we can stop here. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai.
Vanchakalpatarubhyasya kripasindhabhyeyo cha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.